Hey guys, it's Carlos Garcia with the Behind the Stick podcast. This episode is one of my personal favorites. I had the opportunity to interview Shannon Tebay Sidle. She is an amazing bartender out of Death & Co, New York. In this episode, Shannon talks about how sexual harassment should be confronted at the workplace, how to raise your career efficiently, and the importance of personal help. I hope that you take away as much as I did from this episode. Enjoy. I am here with Shannon. I had the chance to meet her in New York when I went out there to do some bar research at Death & Co. So her and I have been trying to get on this Skype call for a while now, back and forth, very busy schedule. So without going any further, here she is, and let's get a little bit about her and her name, where she's from, and stuff like that.
Hey guys, my name is Shannon Tebay Sidle. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've lived in New York City for the past 8 years. Right now, I'm working at Death & Company as a bartender in the East Village. I've been in the service industry for about 10 years and bartending for the last 6.5.
Okay, so when you started bartending, what kind of led you going down that path? Because it sounds like you were in the industry before.
I was in the industry before, but just in a very kind of casual side gig way while I was in school. I came to New York originally for graduate school at Hunter in painting and drawing, getting my MFA. And about midway through that graduate degree, I kind of admitted to myself that I was actually very unhappy in that field and wanted to pursue something else. So I began attending culinary school at the French Culinary Institute. And after that, I worked in a couple kitchens, and then that sort of parlayed into the field of cocktails and then bartending eventually after that.
So you actually started kind of in back of house.
Yeah, my specialty at the FCI, which is now the International Culinary Center, was pastry. And while I was there, I got a waitressing gig at Death & Co, actually. And so I was learning simultaneously about pastry and about pastry and about cocktails. And learning those two skill sets simultaneously really informed me how they are so similar, and each one really informed the other in what I was doing in any other particular role. And I eventually decided to take that kind of holistic skill and focus it towards the cocktail end of things.
Oh, nice. So you got to kind of play around in both realms for a while.
I did, yeah. So
when you were getting started in the bartending realm, what is one crazy story that kind of sticks out?
I mean, how does one pick? Crazy stories, as I'm sure you have experienced as well.
Oh, yeah.
This one is in the forefront of my mind because I was actually discussing it with someone earlier today at a photo shoot, and I was speaking with a gal who had stitches in her palm from a broken bottle, and I remember very, very vividly the night that Obama was elected the first time. I was waitressing at Death & Co, and one of the bartenders had kept a bottle of champagne in our Pebble Ice machine in the basement for when it was, hopefully at that time announced that Obama had won the election. And when it happened, everyone in the bar was cheering and hooting and hollering, and we were having a grand old time. And he ran downstairs and he brought up this bottle of champagne, and he stood in the middle of the room, and you've been at Death & Co, you know the size of the room, it's quite small.
Yeah.
And he sabers the bottle in the middle of the room, but because he had it shoved in the Pebble Ice machine, and it was only half cold, and if you've ever sabered a bottle of champagne, it's very important that the entire thing is the same temperature. And the entire thing just exploded in his hand in the center of the room, and he ended up having to go to the hospital to get a bunch of stitches in the middle of his palm, and we kind of muddied our way through service with one bartender for the rest of the night. And he was ultimately fine, but it definitely gave everyone a memorable election story that particular year.
Yeah, that's funny. You remember the exact day and everything. That's something to remember. So I have no experience in sabering champagne ever. Is this something you've ever done before?
I have. I actually made it a few years back. I made it my New Year's resolution to learn how to saber a bottle of champagne. And it got very close to the end of the year. I think it was around just like somewhere between Christmas and New Year's this particular year. And I mentioned that I hadn't done it yet to my husband, and he's also in the industry. He's a bartender as well. And he was like, well, let's do it. And he knows how to do it. And, he taught me how to do it in our kitchen in our New York apartment.
Nice.
That night. And we have a video of me doing that in slow motion for the first time.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Yeah. So it one shot got it the first time?
I had a very good teacher for one thing, and I got lucky.
Oh, nice. That's memorable too.
Yeah.
So when you were getting started more on the bartending side, what are some obstacles that you had to overcome?
Thankfully, this is a topic that, has been in the forefront of not just the hospitality industry lately, but really our contemporary culture at large. That being learning how to confront and deal with sexual harassment in the workplace. Particularly when I was starting out, both as a waitress and also as a bartender, I was much younger. I was less confident, less experienced version of myself. I was in a brand new city. I was trying to fit in. And it was really hard at the time to know where to draw the line or what was considered acceptable, both from colleagues and ultimately also from guests, especially because I was so dependent on my job and, still am. But at the time when I was so new to the industry and really wanting to kind of make a name for myself, I was terrified of being ostracized or losing a job if I spoke up or rocked the boat in any way. And as I've grown and advanced through the industry and been in other roles, bartending and management and other such things, I've been fortunate enough to be in positions where I can more confidently snuff out that type of behavior from a higher position. And really, if I could give my younger self any advice, it would be to never be afraid to speak up about that kind of thing, because there's really no reason to ever allow yourself to feel compromised or unsafe or to allow anyone to have that kind of power over you in the workplace. And if you're working in a place that's worth working in the first place and worth committing your time and energy towards, management is always going to take your side, and there's no reason to ever be afraid or embarrassed about that kind of thing. I really have to commend over the last couple of years the really brave individuals in the industry, both women and men for that matter, who've spoken openly about their experiences in this regard. They've made so many other people feel less marginalized and really offered up a strong support system for the victims in those situations. Beyond that, these accounts are also, forcing the perpetrators to be held accountable for their actions, which is essential for making it stop altogether. These are crimes and they shouldn't be swept under the rug any longer.
Yeah, that's a good one right now. There's everything going on. This industry seems, from the guest side, they always seem that it's okay for them to do that, but now people are realizing that bartenders aren't just a piece of meat.
Sure. It's any time, particularly also when there's alcohol involved and people are letting down their inhibitions, boundaries can be crossed, and it's important to set up those lines very, very vividly amongst staff and between staff and guests and wherever the risk is.
Getting started in this industry, what's a piece of advice you wish you knew?
Something that I think a lot of people do, and this definitely is a strategy to learn a lot that has its merits, but flipping it on its head worked pretty well for me, actually, and it's something that I observed in a lot of prominent bartenders while I was cocktailing and trying to kind of learn how to advance. And that's, people often, in New York particularly, want to spread themselves very, very thin by working at many bars at the same time. And while that definitely has its merits because you get to learn from a lot of different mentors and you get to see different styles and work in bars that are different styles. You can work in volume bars and cocktail bars at the same time, or clubs or whatever the case may be, and kind of glean from all of those different types of environments. The people who I saw rise in their careers most efficiently were people who more or less hugged a tree or hugged a bar, I guess, and really committed all of their time and energy to one spot. And, first of all, obviously it's not easy. Maybe it takes a little bit of that sort of bar hopping mentality to find a place that's a good fit for you or that really encompasses the style of bartending that you are looking to grasp onto. But once you find it, just focusing all of your attention on that one spot, to me, I think is very valuable, because it means that when you're there, and your attention and your energy is singularly on this one group of people, this one menu, this one experience for guests, this one location, instead of coming in, once or twice a week and kind of like giving it a half effort, or even if it's a full effort, you're only there 1 day or 2 days. So the opportunities to grow in that company are not going to be as available to you if you're spreading yourself amongst several locations at once. And it's something that in New York is very easy to do, because there's also so much pressure to work all the time. Work-life balance is kind of a hard thing. But by staying just in one spot, I think that is the most efficient way to rise in a company.
With work-life balance, that's a thing a lot of bartenders struggle. Is there any tips you could give someone?
It is a struggle, and it definitely just has to be something that we are constantly making an effort to prioritize. It's essential for me. It keeps me sane. I have a husband and a dog, and prioritizing time for them is key in making sure that I don't burn out at work. They give me something to focus my energy and attention on that are not work-related, not to mention personal time with my friends or just time by myself, which is also very important. Additionally, for me, making time for my physical fitness is extremely important, not only to my physical health, but also my mental health. Reminding myself in these ways that work is the only important factor in my life really helps mitigate the potential for burnout. Our line of work is so amazing and so much fun, and for that reason, I think it's particularly easy to get wrapped up and find yourself there all the time. But then on the back end, it's gonna, end up being a negative thing and cause you to burn out. Work, while it's so great, it's not everything. You just have to focus on balance and really prioritize it.
What are ways you focus on growing your knowledge and skills in order to become a better bartender?
Outside of reading whatever books and articles that are coming out that I can get my hands on, and generally trying to stay abreast of new ideas and information that are becoming available, something I think is so important is actually to just go to bars and drink cocktails. Engaging in the culture that we're helping create from a guest perspective in general, that to me is extremely important and inspiring. It seems to be pretty commonplace for bartenders to think it's cool or helpful to go to cocktail bars and just get a beer and a shot in order to appear maybe low maintenance or not make the bartender work too hard. But I mean, first and foremost, we're bartenders. If that's what we should be excited about doing, is making cocktails. And if you're in this business and you don't like making cocktails, I mean, maybe you should rethink your career choices. I remember one specific instance sitting at Milk and Honey, and when I was fortunate enough to be sitting in front of Sasha Petrosky, and we were having this exact conversation actually, and he said to me, "I love cocktails. I don't understand why bartenders don't order them. It's our craft. We work hard at it. Let's honor each other by ordering each other's creations." And for me, that was a very, very simple yet super profound moment. What better way to learn about what our colleagues are doing and get inspired and create a dialogue amongst one another than to actually participate and engage in the interaction that we're offering up to our guests on a nightly basis.
That's awesome. I've never heard anyone say that yet. That's really cool.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, too many, I feel like you were saying with the bartenders, it's, oh, I want to just go get a shot and a beer. That's such a common thing. Even here in Colorado, it's interesting to hear that they're also doing that in New York.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people come, like, bartenders will come and sit at the bar at Deadline Company and be like, "Oh, just give me a beer, just give me a beer." I'm like, "Are you sure? Because, like, we worked really hard on this menu, and, like, I want this opportunity to show off. Like, this is my chance. Come and sit here and, like, let me make you cocktails. Like, this is what we do. Let's start a conversation about, like, what we're working on, and the best way to do that is by, like, engaging one another." And I love cocktails. I like drinking cocktails. I like making cocktails. And when Sasha said that to me, I was just like, damn, he's right. Like, this is part of the experience and part of how we learn and teach one another and actually, like, engage the community. Like, why not?
And I've realized doing that same thing, you learn about ingredients you've never heard of. Like when you see them on a menu, you're like, what is that? It's so cool.
Yeah. Order it, taste it, find out, ask questions.
Yeah. When you were getting started, who were some of your mentors and how did they help you overcome some of your challenges?
The first real inspiration to me in this industry was Jessica Gonzalez. When I started at Death & Co. in 2010, she was the first and only female bartender in the establishment. She very impressively held her own amongst this fleet of tall, bearded men. That may not seem really like such a big deal now, but at the time, the quantity of prominent women in the industry was not nearly as high. I mean, there were definitely very important and influential women making huge waves at the time. But I was new to the industry, and she was the first one who I ever worked with and learned from. Therefore, she specifically had a really profound effect on me. She was also the only bartender at Death & Co. at the time who had ever been promoted up from a support position to a bartender role. So that was a really huge motivation for me to kind of stick with it throughout the ups and downs and the challenges, knowing that growth in the industry at Death & Co. or otherwise was possible if I just stayed focused and worked hard and learned as much as I possibly could.
Are there any skills she taught you specifically?
She taught me how to be a badass. I mean, you know, something that I tried to always do before I started bartending, and then also even now, still, is very closely watch the technique of all the bartenders who I've had a chance to work with and glean as much as I can. Definitely even in the last 2 years, or I guess maybe a year and a half or so at Death & Co., watching the other bartenders there has dramatically changed my personal bartending style.
As you keep growing, what keeps you motivated and driven?
Honestly, this is going to sound maybe cheesy and generic, but my colleagues really inspire me every single shift that I'm at the bar. Not just the other bartenders who are just so amazing and so much fun to work with, but honestly, every staff member in every position at Death & Co. I'm really fortunate to work in such an amazing bar that attracts and demands an immense amount of dedication and talent. And therefore, the people who work there are eager to learn and to grow in every role we have to offer. The servers, the doormen and women, kitchen staff, managers, everyone cares such a great deal about doing the absolute best that they can possibly do. And that really inspires me and motivates me every day. Because if someone in a backwaiter position does, you know, such a killer job and demonstrates that they really care about hospitality at its core and being the best at what they do, I mean, I really have no excuse to not execute at the highest possible caliber and put out the best cocktails I possibly can. And hopefully then holistically altogether, we can give our guests a really wonderful experience.
Were there any moments you thought to yourself that you couldn't do this, or this industry's not for you, and how did you overcome those moments?
This may not be the answer you're looking for, but no. I feel super privileged to be a part of this industry. It's ultimately my responsibility every day to make delicious drinks and be nice to people. So what is not to love about that? For me, personally, it's the best job I can imagine. Obviously, from time to time, we all have challenging services or put in difficult situations, but I've never, in my personal experience, had a night so bad that it made me question the career path at large. And if it's not your thing, it's not your thing, and that's totally fine, but you should take the time to acknowledge that and then take the time to find your thing because you'll be happier for it.
What is something new that you're working on right now in this industry?
I mean, I feel like we've watched so many cocktail trends come and go, and we've seen that pendulum swing to any varying degrees of extreme molecular mixology. And that being said, every trend and new scientific innovation has been very important because they've informed the next trend or discovery. And obviously, the more we can learn about what we're doing, the better. And having seen people now push the expansive boundaries of what cocktails are and what they can be, what's really getting me the most excited and what I see as an interesting challenge is reverting kind of back to real minimalism and simplicity in cocktails. What I'm working on now is really trying to figure out how I can come up with something as innovative and new and interesting and creative using ingredients directly out of the bottle. I feel like that is going to ultimately lend itself to cocktails that have staying power, because you'll be able to continue to make them anytime and any place without the need for special equipment or house-made ingredients. And creating within those types of boundaries, I think, is more challenging personally and pushes my mind in a way that I really enjoy. Kind of think and create inward as opposed to this sort of expansive strategy of creativity.
Are there any cocktails you want to share with anyone that you're working on that you're very proud of?
Well, we just launched our new summer menu at Death & Co. I love it. I'm really proud of it, honestly. It was a labor of love, but of course they all are. It was the first menu we launched under the leadership of our newest head bartender, Matt Bellinger. He did a great job, and we all worked on it together. There are 4 bartenders there right now, and so the 4 of us busted this thing out, and I'm really excited about it. We start R&D in the fall, for the fall menu, in just a couple of weeks, and I'm thrilled to see what direction we'll end up going with that. There's generally so little time in between menus to really revel in the shiny newness of one, and we're kind of in that golden phase right now, because as soon as we get one up and running, generally, there's almost immediately you're just back to the grindstone for the next one. So right now, I'm really just enjoying getting to see the reaction of our guests with the cocktails we're putting out for the summer. That being said, something that also gets me excited is having guests come in who remember drinks from the previous menu or the menu before that, and they had those drinks that had such an impact on them that they come back and they remember them and they specifically request them, and get excited when they find out we can still make them because it's their all-time favorite cocktail. And when those drinks are one of yours too, that's also a pretty special thing.
What is your number one rule behind the bar and why?
My number one rule behind the bar is to be efficient. I try and set myself up for success in any way I possibly can. The way I organize my station and my mise en place is always with that goal for maximum efficiency in mind. That sounds obvious, but when you really get down to the minutia, there are so many tiny adjustments that you can make at your station at a given time to really just shave seconds off your ticket times. And it makes a big difference ultimately. That definitely includes working as clean as possible. I think, a messy station or a sink full of dirty tools or tins it's an eyesore to everyone, guests included. But that way of working is also just going to slow you down. And I became particularly sensitive to that while I was working at a bar that had shared stations where we weren't actually assigned to one specific well. It was like a volume bar, so someone might make drinks in one station and then go run a credit card, and someone else will step into that station. And if that person didn't clean and reset all of the tools, then you're walking into someone else's huge mess, and you can't start on what you need to do until you clean up after that person. So that is when I became super sensitive to just cleaning as I go and being efficient in that way, because it ultimately just makes you faster. And the faster you can be, the more time you have to pay attention to your guests and give them the attention that they need and deserve, and then also to help your colleagues. And holistically, it just makes a better bar experience for everyone involved. So a sloppy bartender is pretty much generally just a slow bartender.
What are some specific skills that you are hoping to gain in the next year?
I really am hoping to become a better teacher. I've had the privilege of working with some amazing bartenders and learning from some of really the most influential professionals in New York City, and I want to see that breadth of knowledge passed on. And if I can help facilitate that to new generations of bartenders and hospitality professionals moving forward, I really want to do so. That said, teaching is very much its own skill, and so I want to focus on how to improve my ability to do that, to teach and spread information effectively and in a way that inspires people the way that I've been inspired by my teachers.
Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question, and I don't know. It's a very exciting time to be a part of the Death & Co. family. I'm very fortunate. The company is growing really rapidly. We just opened our second location in Denver, which has been very well received and I'm really excited about. And there's a lot more growth in the pipeline in the coming years, and I really am happy to hitch my wagon to the Death & Co. star and see where that takes me.
How do you think the bartending scene will change in the near future?
Well, over the last several years, I think the influx of social media usage has really changed a lot of people's approach to this industry. And while social media is great for the things that it's great for, it's a great tool for promoting a place of work or cool events or even just regarding one's own personal brand. I think there's often a large disparagement between what or who is popular and what is actually of high quality or talent. And I'd like to see the focus of bartenders shift back to actually mastering the craft instead of just trying to get the most Instagram likes. In an industry that is growing so fast, ultimately quality is what's going to set you apart as opposed to popularity.
What do you think the next big trend will be?
I think the next big trend in our industry is actually going to be a focus on health and wellness. The only way for professionals in hospitality to be able to continue doing this in the long run is to start taking better care of ourselves, drinking less, getting rest, real rest, exercising, etc. And emphasizing these needs is going to then facilitate employers, I think, to offer better benefits. Right now, in addition to health insurance at Duff & Company, every employee is also getting a monthly health and wellness stipend to put towards anything we want that is, falls under that umbrella. It could be a gym membership, yoga class, CrossFit, SoulCycle, whatever you want, just automatically is offered to you if, you choose to use it and can show that you're putting it towards something that is for the betterment of your own personal health. I think that's a really monumental indication of a shift in the mentality of employers moving into the future, and probably one of the best ways to continue to attract and retain talented employees. Our jobs are extremely physically taxing, and there are really amazing bartenders out there looking for stability and therefore either getting out of the industry altogether or moving to other types of work within the industry that take them out from behind the bar. But by focusing on personal health, I think that's really going to increase the longevity of the cocktail bartending career at large.
What is something you are looking forward to related to your career down the road?
That's a tough one, if for no other reason, because it's pretty broad. When I think about things I'm looking forward to and my goals, I tend to divide it into short, medium, and long term. That being said, in the short term, as generic as it sounds, I'm almost always looking forward to my next bartending shift. I enjoy it so much that even if I'm having a bad day or bad week, I think that I don't want to go in, or I'm tired or not feeling well. In spite of myself, I pretty much always leave in a better mood than when I got there. I work with amazing people and I have so much fun at work that it's easy to look forward to going in every day, which I know is not always the case. I'm really lucky to be in that situation. It's a really wonderful job. Medium term, as I mentioned before, the growth of Death & Co. in general as a brand is rapid and exciting, and I can't wait to see over the next few years, how our identity expands and grows and what else we as a company can do and bring to the table, and where we will do those things. Long term, who knows? I could see myself in any number of roles, either running programs, doing brand work, opening bars, all potential options for me. Just trying to take it one day at a time right now.
Kind of keeping the doors open too.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't necessarily, you can plan your future all you want, and who knows how often that actually plays out the way that you thought it would. So for now, like I said, I'm super happy working with the brand and with the people that I am, and I'm very excited to see where that can lead me down the road.
Awesome. One final question. If you were to have a drink with anyone throughout history and time, who would it be, what drink, and why?
I'd like to be able to go back and have another cocktail with Sasha, I think. I was lucky enough to have drinks with him a couple times, and I think one more would really be great. And I'd love for it to be a Manhattan because that's my all-time favorite cocktail.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there any shout outs? Anyone you want to give recognition to? Any last few words?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say hi to the other DNC bartenders who are there with me at the moment. Matt, Sam, and Jared. They're the best. I have a great time working with them. And then, of course, all the other Death & Co. bartenders from the past who have helped establish that bar as the amazing spot that it is, and really created the infrastructure for the company.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.
Mm-hmm. That is the end of this episode. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to reach out to us with any questions, comment, concerns, feel free to at our website, behindthestickpodcast.com, our Instagram at behindthestickpodcast. Facebook is the same, or even my personal Instagram at Carlos the Creative. Have a good one. Bye.